I'd like to introduce the president of one of those companies, Wells Fargo Community Foothills Market, Kevin Barri, who is the president, and he's going to be introducing our next speaker. Kevin, welcome.
Great, good. I guess it's good afternoon and good evening on the other side.
Well, the sun isn't quite down yet, but I guess we can call it evening. It's after work,
close, so. I think it is in Rhode Island, and we'll talk about that in a second. Well, I'm really honored to be here tonight and participating in this symposium and have the opportunity to introduce our next guest speaker here. I will just share, I have a personal love for this organization. I was introduced to it about 12 years ago through CC and the fantastic leadership that he provides to our community here in the greater Sacramento market and across the whole country now as it's expanded over the last several years too. And it's just such a wonderful organization and do so much wonderful work. And I know Wells Fargo's been actively engaged through our foundation and giving, but as well as volunteering and working through our financial education workshops and their summer intern programs too, which some we're very proud of and happy to be participating with here in Sacramento. And I believe that's throughout much of the APAPA network now. A couple other things, you know, Wells Fargo is committed to our communities in a lot of different ways and lots of organizations across the country, but more specifically our diverse community. There's such a need, like we've heard from some of our speakers already, and just listening to the youth here a little bit ago speak on the videos, it was just a great reminder of the work that we need to do to continue to encourage and engage our youth to learn and understand and be a part of the process going forward. But Wells Fargo is committed over $200 million the last several years to our diverse and historically underserved groups, including the African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, our American Indians, Native Americans, Native Hawaiians, and other Pacific Islanders. We've really wanted to make sure that we're not missing out on any opportunity to help any of these groups find ways to better off their communities and make a bigger impact on what they want to accomplish in our communities. So we're happy and proud to be a supporter of APAPA. We have been since the very beginning. The Future of the Leadership Symposium could not be more timely given everything that's going on, as we've already discussed and everyone's well aware of. Our country needs it and our country needs more of it. So thank you very much, Yen Marshall. Yen's a very good close friend of mine too, for her leadership and the board. I've worked with a number of the board members over the years and chairs, and they all are so committed to this cause and making a difference. I'm going to go ahead and make a great introduction here of Mayor Allan Fung of Cranston, Rhode Island. Like I mentioned, I think you're almost exact furthest point across the country from me right now as I'm in California. But we're sure excited to have you here to tell us your leadership story and being a part of the APAPA symposium today. So it's a pleasure and an honor to meet you and to introduce you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for that great introduction and for Wells Fargo's great work and commitment to all of our respective communities. Good evening, everyone. I'm Cranston, Rhode Island Mayor Allan Fung. And I want to take a moment to thank APAPA for putting together this very important symposium in these crucial, important times in our nation's history for all of you, our next generation of leaders. You know, because when I was growing up, I never envisioned being in politics because there wasn't anyone that looked like me in public service. You know, I could have never imagined that today I'd be Skyping with all of you as the first Chinese American mayor in our state's history, or even as a two-time gubernatorial nominee for my party. Yes, even though I'm on the coast, I'm a Republican, which is a minority in and of itself here in these blue states. But, you know, to be involved in politics is something that, you know, I've really cherished. You know, because when my parents came to this country from Hong Kong, like many other Chinese and other immigrant families, they came in pursuit of a better life for the family that they were about to start. They started a small family business, a Chinese restaurant. You know, we owned and operated that restaurant for 35 years. And I grew up working every facet of that business, from washing dishes to waiting on tables to even cooking in those hot woks. Yeah, we probably broke a few child labor laws, but that's okay, because it was those experiences that made me who I am today. And most importantly, I've never forgotten where I've come from. And like all Chinese parents, when I was growing up, they emphasized one thing, and that's the power of education. The power of education as a means to get a good job, and they pushed me to study hard. Well, my career path, like I said, didn't really come into politics right off the bat. I fell in love with law when I was in high school. And I graduated from college, went to law school, made my parents proud because I was the first in my family to do that, and had a great law career, working as a prosecutor, working at a prestigious law firm, then ultimately heading up the government affairs for MetLife Auto and Home, one of the largest insurers in our country. Politics was the furthest thing that was on my mind when I was going through my legal career. But then one day, the city that I love, Cranston, the city that was, my parents' restaurant was in for decades, and where my family still lives to this day, was in deep financial trouble. They were in junk bond status and had the worst bond rating of any city in the country. When I started kind of looking into what was going on, I got angry. I got angry because people that I supported ended up, making these critical mistakes that plummeted us into the depths of financial despair. And I decided to run for office back then. I made a decision to run for the city council. But one of the things that was, for me back then probably was early 2001, I'll never forget this conversation I had with my mom. Being Chinese descent, all Asians tend to be very private. She thought I was crazy. She actually said to me, "What are you doing getting involved in politics? You're Chinese. You've got a good job. Go start a family." Well, I'm glad I didn't listen, because I won that first race for the city council, helped turn the city around, and fell in love with public service, and most importantly, helping people. And I decided to run for a higher office, and here I am 12 years later, mayor of our state's second largest city. But one of the things I want to let you know about, it hasn't been easy. Being, of a different face, especially in a city that's predominantly Italian-American, Irish-American, I've encountered it all. Racism still is alive to this day. We're seeing this discussion going on in communities all across the country. And I've experienced it, even from my first election. I'll never forget that headline on the eve of the election, the local paper, the Cranston Herald, and I was going against an Italian-American judge. The headline read, "Voters have a choice, Italian or Chinese," basically boiling it down to a food choice, which was ridiculous. And, fast forward a decade, during one of my gubernatorial runs, a person actually hung my sign from a noose upside down because he didn't like what I believed in and didn't like what I was doing their campaign. And here's what's frustrating, because as we were raising these issues publicly, I felt so alone because I didn't have a lot of people standing by my side. I've even experienced it in my marriage. I have a biracial marriage to my wife who's Irish American. And on that campaign trail, going statewide, I had several kids, harassing me and my wife with that typical, you've heard it all, ching chong ching type language. When you fast forward and look at how far we've come, it's still alive. But what's important for me is that I made sure, that I kicked down those doors, those ceilings that had been a barrier to so many other generations, not just Asians, many other minorities in Rhode Island. And I made sure I worked hard in this position as mayor, so I'm not messing it up for you, the next generation. But now is the time for you to get involved and not let this moment in history pass you by. I got involved because I was angry at what leaders did to mess up my city. You need to get involved too, because there's so many problems out there about which you should be angry. Don't be afraid to run for office, even if it's not the Asian thing to do. Sometimes it's okay not to listen to your mom or your dad. Don't be afraid to get involved by even serving on boards or commissions. That's another way to help. And don't be afraid to even work in a career in the public sector. It is rewarding, where you can make a difference in our backyards, in our state, in our country. And don't be afraid that you have a different face or a different last name. Now is the time for all of you to make a difference in our society. And I'm so glad to have this opportunity to engage with many of you. And I thank you for the opportunity to be part of it. Thank you, APAPA. Thank you for the privilege to be here tonight.
Wow, such an amazing speech from Mayor Fung. Thank you so much for that. And now I would like to introduce